The Ten Commandments, universally known, and the way in which God introduced himself to the Jewish people, a climax moment at Mount Sinai in the Torah's narrative. God introduced himself as the God who took the Jewish people out of Egypt, and he says at the very start of the Ten Commandments, he says, I am Hashem, your God, a jealous God. A lot of people who are religious have a difficult time with that. What does it mean that God is jealous? It doesn't sit well with people. In fact, isn't that one of the things that we're told not to be? Furthermore, if God is needless, perfect, unlimited, has no hole that needs filling, so to speak, then how can he be wanting or desiring or needing of anything? And again, what makes it more interesting is that the last of the Ten Commandments tells us, do not covet, do not be jealous. So God's saying, I'm the jealous one, and you should not covet, you should not be jealous. How do we make sense of this? And it clearly must be a very significant part of the Ten Commandments, part of Torah, because the beginning and the end are really, in some ways, expressions of the whole. What it's all about. You start off with a beginning saying this is where we're heading, and the conclusion should be that final moment, that final point. So what does it mean that jealousy runs at the heart of the Ten Commandments, or perhaps of Torah? Those that say you cannot really say anything about God, that the Torah only uses borrowed language, but it's all just metaphors, it doesn't really mean anything on a deep literal level, puts you in a bit of a tricky spot, because ultimately this is God's word. It is his chosen language. And so what are you saying? The Torah isn't really true on a deepest fundamental level? That certainly doesn't seem to be a classic Jewish position. And also, if it is borrowed language, if it is a metaphor, well, it's trying to tell you something. What is it that it's trying to tell you? I think a much more healthy way of looking at this, that several Jewish educators and rabbis have discussed on JTV, is to really see the way that the Torah describes us, and it makes much more sense this way. The way the Torah describes God and man is that not so much that God is using metaphors, but that actually he designed us in his image. So the image, the reflection, is actually less strong than the real thing. It's just a reflection. And so actually we are the metaphor. So our hand is the metaphor for God's hand. Our emotions are a metaphor for God's emotions. And that makes much more sense. My love can only reach so much. God's love is infinite. It's much greater. My hand can shoo away a fly. God's hand can split a sea. It makes more sense that that's all the way it should be viewed. But then we run into a problem. What does it mean that God describes himself as jealous? And this seems pretty fundamental. This is like core. And a lot of people, religious people, will look at this and they'll say, well, it can't mean that, because God can't really be desiring or needing of anything. Like, he is complete and perfect within himself and limitless. It's clearly all just a metaphor. I've just explained why that's a challenging position to take. We should take God at his word. This is his book. It's his gift to us. It's his sort of instruction manual to help us get to know him. So I don't think it works to say that God needs nothing, and on the other hand, we are the ones that are needy and vulnerable. And this is a debate that's actually raging around the Jewish world today. It would seem to me that it's not just intuitive to say that God desires, has needs, but it also seems to be what the text is taking us to. First of all, let's just think about it on a purely pragmatic level, practical level. If I create, I do so because I have a need for something. I desire something, otherwise I wouldn't create. Only a creator has needs. So if I create a desk because I need a desk to work from, obviously I need a desk. Does the desk need anything at all? The desk doesn't need to be here. The only reason it's here is because it's serving my purpose and my need. Isn't that pretty intuitive? So if God creates us, is it not intuitive to say that he's after something? Like, what are you saying? It's just he just acts frivolously and there's no benefit to him? If you want to say it's an act of pure altruism where he gains nothing from it, then it wouldn't really make sense that he would seem to suggests that he has so much at stake. He describes himself as a jealous God and describes himself with this array of language. And also, if the highest purpose in Judaism, the way it seems to be described, is having a relationship with God, you can't really have a relationship with someone that is in no way vulnerable to what you do, that in no way what you do matters to them, makes a difference to them. So it's actually this God that often religion portrays to us as needing nothing, as a very detached, impersonal, not very lovable God, to be honest. Because if I actually don't make a difference to his life, well then, why should I be interested in serving him? I don't matter to him fundamentally. But on the flip side, if you think about things again intuitively, from our side as the created being, it doesn't make sense. It's not intuitive that we are the fundamentally more needy one in the relationship, because we are a created being, and a created being only exists because it serves the desire, the purpose, the plan of the creator. That should be pretty obvious. And therefore, I think when we look at the Ten Commandments, everything sort of fits into place well when we look at it through this lens. I feel like people often have to jump through hoops in explaining God's jealousy, which is how he introduced himself in the Ten Commandments. But how about if we look at it this way? What does jealousy mean? What is jealousy? Jealousy is, I want something that I do not have, that you have, and I want it for me. The way God's need is best explained is that he doesn't need something, he needs someone other than him. Because actually the one consequence of being perfect, of being completely self-sufficient, is that you don't really have a relationship with anyone other than yourself. And it's not good to be alone. God tells that to mankind at the very beginning of creation. That's why he says, I'm creating Eve for you, because it's not good to be alone. It might be comfortable to be alone, to be totally self-sufficient, all-powerful, all-knowing, but it's not good. And that's why God introduced himself to us as well. He says, I'm the God who took you out of Egypt. Not I'm the God who's all-powerful, all-knowing, almighty. No, I'm the God who took you out of Egypt, meaning that you, being your God, having a relationship with you, being able to share my existence with another, that is everything to me. And so that's why God creates us, because it's not good to be alone. And therefore, far from it being something where he couldn't care less whether or not we engage in a relationship with him. No, this is fundamental, this is essential. And God's jealousy is, you have love to give, and I don't yet have you fully in my life. You and me have not fully merged together as one. He talks, so to speak, to every individual. And I am seeking that relationship with you. Why? Out of my goodness, my desire to share, my desire to want to have a partner to share my existence with, which is a neediness, but it's a very beautiful neediness. It's not a neediness that diminishes God. It's a neediness that raises us up. The need for purpose, for meaning, to share our existence with more than just ourselves. That is not a diminishing kind of weakness. It's actually something that is part of God's perfection. That he says, just me is not enough. So yes, he's jealous in the sense that he wants us. He desperately desires us from a place of goodness, from a place of wanting to share his existence, to have us, to be in relationship with us. And therefore it makes sense also that the last of the Ten Commandments tells us, you should not be jealous. Don't you start coveting, because what God is telling us is, don't think you're the needy partner here. If you're a created being, you're here for a purpose, not for your own needs. I'm the one that's jealous. I'm the one that's vulnerable. You, yes, you are dependent on me, but ultimately this is not your project. The world, the universe, your life is my project, God says. So, far from what religion tells us, which is that you're needy and God needs nothing, so you better do what he says, else you're going to end up in hell forever, which is like just so abusive and manipulative. It actually seems that if we let God speak for himself, he's telling us, I desperately desire to share my life with you. And don't you start thinking that you are needy and you're vulnerable, when you're a created being, when I've created you for one sole purpose, to share my life with you. And if you go through your life coveting all the things that you don't have, you're mistaking yourself for God, because there can only be one purpose in creation, and that is what the Creator wills. So it also happens to be psychologically, and we're starting to see psychology, this kind of psychology emerge now. It happens to be that thinking of yourself as not so needy, which is just intuitive, and rather as needed, is exceptionally healthy. Because you're no longer burdened with your needs, life needing to go the perfect way you think it should, when frankly we don't even know what we need half the days, and our needs change from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. But on the other hand, focus on what you can do in the place you find yourself in. Focus on what's needed of you. And from all the psychological research that I've come across, it seems that there's a consistency in the message that if you know that you're needed, you're necessary, that you're serving a purpose, that there's meaning in your life, even if you are suffering, even if you're not having the most wonderful physical experience, even if you're deprived of things like love and respect, even those things, if you know you're necessary, you're able to keep going. So we have to let God speak for himself. If he says he's a jealous God and he wants to be our God, he really means it. And when he tells us not to be jealous, that we should not be coveting, he also really means that, because it's the truth. We don't need. We're here to serve. I'm Ollie Annisfeld and you're watching JTV.